My name is Bear Cooper. I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop. I was just walking past our bedroom, heading to the garage to work on my car. The night was quiet, too quiet. The kind of stillness that makes you notice things you wouldn't otherwise. That's when I heard her. At first, it was just soft, muffled sounds, like she was trying to keep it in. But then, it cracked. A deep, raw sob, like something inside her had shattered. I stopped. Briella wasn't the kind of woman who cried easily. If she did, it was usually out of anger or frustration, not this. This was different. This was grief. I told myself to walk away. Whatever it wasn't my business. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. But something about her sobs kept me frozen in place, my hand gripping the doorframe, my chest tightening with unease. Then, I heard her whisper something. And that's when my whole world stopped. I just wish things were different. I wish he could stay. I don't want to choose. My stomach twisted. Who was he? At that moment, it wasn't just suspicion, it was certainty. My wife had been living a double life. And I was about to find out just how deep the betrayal ran. This story is based on real-life experiences and is shared for emotional reflection and educational purposes. Infidelity is a painful and complex issue, affecting not just the individuals involved but their families, mental health, and emotional well-being. This story delves into betrayal, emotional manipulation, and self-discovery, so viewer discretion is advised. If you've ever faced a similar situation, know that you are not alone. This is my story. And maybe, just maybe, it's yours too. If you had asked me a few years ago, I would have told you that Briella was my soulmate. We had that kind of connection that made people jealous, the late-night talks, the inside jokes, the feeling that no matter how hard life got, we had each other. I loved her more than I ever thought I could love someone. And for a while, I believed she loved me too. But love isn't always enough. And sometimes, what you think is love, is just a well-crafted illusion. I won't lie. I wasn't perfect. I had my flaws, my insecurities. But one thing I knew for sure. I was loyal. I was committed. No matter what we went through, I stayed. Even when she hurt me. Even when she betrayed me. And she had. More than once. Yet, I kept convincing myself that she could change. That we could change. But what I didn't realize back then was that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them. Briella Espinosa was beautiful, captivating, magnetic, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and command attention without even trying. And she knew it. She worked as a waitress at one of the busiest restaurants in City Walk, the kind of place where Hollywood executives, musicians, and actors would casually drop by. She loved the fast-paced energy, the late nights, the endless new faces. And in that world, she was admired. Not just by customers. Not just by co-workers. But by men. A lot of men. At first, I thought nothing of it. I mean, what kind of man would I be if I couldn't handle my wife being social? But the problem wasn't that she talked to people, it was that she hid things from me. She would meet new male co-workers, add them on social media, laugh at their jokes, text them late at night. But the moment I asked about them, her entire demeanor would change. Why are you being so paranoid? I can have friends, Bear. Do you want me to quit my job just because you're insecure? But it wasn't insecurity. It was instinct. Because I had seen this before. I had seen the lies, the excuses, the way she looked me in the eyes and told me things that weren't true. She had done it once before. And if history had taught me anything, it was that she was more than capable of doing it again. Frankie Beltran. I didn't know his name at first. He was just a shadow in the background, a blurred figure in conversations I wasn't supposed to hear, a name I never saw but somehow felt. I started noticing the signs before I even knew he existed. The way Briella would smile at her phone, that small, secretive smirk that wasn't meant for me. The way she started dressing up more often, even on days when she swore she was exhausted from work. Her phone, once carelessly left on the nightstand, became something she guarded with her life. At first, I thought I was overthinking. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I was letting old wounds fester. But deep down, I knew better. Because history has a way of repeating itself. Briella and I had been through hell before. We had broken up once, spent 2 years apart. And even before that, there were lies. There were secrets. She had hidden things from me before. Male friends, co-workers, people she swore were nothing more than acquaintances. When I questioned her, she gave me answers that never quite fit together. One time, there was a guy on her social media I had never seen before. I asked about him. She laughed it off and said he was her cousin. But I knew her whole family. When I pushed for details, the story changed. She said when her sister married, it made this guy family by association. A technicality. I wanted to believe her. But something about it gnawed at me, like a whisper in the back of my mind telling me that I was being played. And I was. Because eventually, I found out the truth. He wasn't her cousin. He wasn't even a distant relative. He was just a guy from her past. A guy she had known since childhood. A guy she used to kiss. That should have been my breaking point. That should have been enough. But it wasn't. Because I had already forgiven worse. Briella had betrayed me in the most unforgivable way possible. Not with a stranger. Not with a coworker. But with my own brother. A drunken night. A mistake, she called it. She claimed she didn't remember what happened, that she had been too out of it to know. But when the rumors started, when my brother began telling people they had slept together, she didn't fight it. She didn't deny it. She just told me to let it go. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was shame. Maybe she really didn't remember. But the damage was already done. And now, years later, I was starting to see the same patterns, the same behaviors, the same cold distance between us. I told myself this time would be different. I told myself I wouldn't ignore the signs. But when you love someone, when you've built a life with them, it's easier to hold on to the hope that things will get better. That they won't hurt you again. That maybe, just maybe, they finally learn to love you the way you love them. But I was wrong. So wrong. At first, it was subtle. A shift in the way she spoke to me, the way she looked at me, like I was no longer someone she was excited to see, but someone she had to tolerate. I brushed it off. Told myself she was stressed. Work had been exhausting for her, she had family issues weighing on her. I tried to be understanding. But then, the red flags started piling up. She had always been social, always had people around her, but now. She was more protective over her friendships than ever before. Especially when it came to men. Whenever I asked about someone new on her social media, her reaction was instant: anger, deflection, accusations. Why are you always questioning me? I can have friends, Bear. Not every guy I talk to is someone I'm sleeping with. That last one hit me hard. I never accused her of cheating. Not once. All I ever wanted was honesty. Transparency. Just a simple conversation about who these people were. But instead of reassuring me, she got defensive. Instead of giving me a straight answer, she flipped the blame onto me. That's when I knew. She was hiding something. Because when someone has nothing to hide, they don't react like that. Then, there were the late nights. The extra shifts at work that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The sudden urgency to make more money, even though I had been the one covering most of the bills. I started noticing little things, how she spent more time in front of the mirror before leaving, how she put more effort into her appearance on days she was supposedly exhausted. At first, I told myself she just wanted to look good. But then I remembered, she never used to do this for me. It wasn't just her job keeping her distracted. It was someone else. The phone was the biggest giveaway. She used to be careless with it, leaving it on the bed, on the table, unlocked. But now? It never left her side. If I walked into the room, she'd angle it away. If I sat next to her, she'd tilt the screen just enough so I couldn't see. One night, I reached for it, just instinctively, just to hand it to her. And the way she snatched it out of my hand? My stomach twisted. I knew that reaction. I had seen it before. And it only meant one thing. She had something to hide. Then came the distance. She stopped touching me. Stopped laughing with me. Stopped looking at me the way she used to. Our bed, once a place where we shared warmth, passion, and late-night whispers, turned into something else entirely. A cold, empty space where we existed side by side, but never together. No affection. No connection. Nothing. It was like she had already left me. She just hadn't said it out loud yet. I wanted to believe I was wrong. I wanted to convince myself that I was just overthinking, that I was letting my past insecurities poison something that still had a chance. So I tried to ignore the feeling in my gut. I told myself she was just busy, that her mood swings were from stress, that her secrecy with her phone wasn't what it looked like. But no matter how many excuses I made for her, that feeling wouldn't go away. It stayed with me when she came home late without explanation. It burned in my chest when she pulled away from my touch, when she avoided my eyes like looking at me was too much to bear. It sat like a weight in my stomach when she smiled at her phone but never smiled at me. I knew something was wrong. And then, one night, I stopped lying to myself. I grabbed my phone, opened up Facebook, and clicked on her profile. Everything looked normal. Our pictures were still there. Her status still said we were together. To anyone scrolling through, we were just another couple, still in love, still solid. But something about it felt off. Too perfect. Too carefully maintained. I remembered something a friend had once told me, how social media can be curated, how what you see isn't always the full story. So I tested a theory. I logged out of my account. Opened up Facebook again. Then, I searched for her profile using a different account. And that's when I saw it. Her relationship status was gone. Not changed. Not hidden. Gone. To the world, Briella Espinosa was single. My hand started shaking. I scrolled through her photos. The ones with me? Still there, but buried. The ones she had recently posted? All selfies, all pictures of nights out, all carefully crafted to make it look like she was living a life with no attachments. And then I saw a name. Frankie Beltran. It wasn't on every post. Just a few. A comment here. A reaction there. Small. Subtle. But when I clicked on his profile, I felt something inside me snap. Because I had never heard of this man before. But he knew my wife. And I was about to find out just how well. I couldn't shake the feeling. Even after seeing her Facebook status, after seeing Frankie's name pop up in places it shouldn't have been, I still tried to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. But deep down, I already knew the truth. And that night, I got the confirmation I never wanted. I had been working in the garage, trying to keep my mind busy. Anything to stop the thoughts from racing, to stop the questions from clawing at my chest. Then, I heard something. At first, I thought I imagined it. But then, it came again, a muffled sob, coming from our bedroom. I froze. Briella wasn't the type to cry easily. And if she did, it was never like this. This wasn't frustration or stress. This was something deeper. Something painful. I walked closer, careful not to make a sound. I stood just outside the door, heart pounding in my chest. She was talking to herself, her voice raw, breaking between sobs. I knew she had been struggling with family issues. She had told me about her brother's addiction, about how scared she was that her other brother might be deported. At first, that's what it sounded like. She sniffled, muttered something about missing them. But then, her voice dropped lower. Almost like she was confessing something to the walls. And that's when she said it. I wish things were different. I wish he could stay. I don't want to choose. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might be sick. She wasn't talking about her family anymore. She was talking about him. I took a step back, gripping the doorframe, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't regret. This was love. Love for another man. I wanted to burst through that door and demand answers. I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could do this to me. But I didn't. Because at that moment, something inside me shattered. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying those words over and over in my head. She was in love with someone else. And I needed to know who. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Those words, I don't want to choose, kept repeating in my head like a haunting echo. I had spent months trying to silence my doubts, convincing myself that I was imagining things. But now, there was no doubt. I had to know the truth. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling as I opened up Facebook again. I had already checked her profile before, had already seen how everything looked normal. But that was the problem, it looked too perfect. Something told me there was more. So I switched accounts. Logged in through a friend's profile. Someone Briella had never met. And that's when I saw the difference. All those little changes I had noticed before. They weren't just in my head. Her profile, through my account, still had remnants of our relationship. But through my friends? It was like I didn't exist. No pictures of us. No posts about me. No sign that she was in a relationship at all. She looked single. Scrolling through her recent posts, I saw the same pattern, selfies, nights out, drinks in her hand, arms around her friends. But where was he? I searched for his name. Frankie Beltran. I didn't have to look long. There he was, buried in the comments. Not on every post. Not obvious. Just subtle enough. A laughing emoji here. A heart reaction there. A casual inside joke that I didn't understand. But she did. And that was enough. That sick, twisting feeling in my stomach returned as I kept scrolling. The way they interacted. It wasn't just friendly. It was familiar. Comfortable. Intimate. I clicked on his profile. And the first thing I saw? A photo of him, at her job. Smiling. Like he belonged there. Like he belonged with her. My hands clenched around my phone. I had my answer. And now, I had to decide what to do with it. I had spent the entire night replaying everything in my head. The lies. The distance. The way she had been slipping further and further away from me while I clung to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I could pull her back. But I couldn't. Because she had already let go. By the time morning came, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I just wanted the truth. So I waited. The house felt eerily empty as I sat there in the dark, my phone screen the only light in the room. I scrolled through her posts, through the carefully curated life she had built for herself online. A life that no longer included me. There were selfies, group photos, nights out with friends. And then, in the comments, always lurking but never too obvious, Frankie. A name I hadn't known before. A man I had never met. But now, I knew enough. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening with something I couldn't quite name. Betrayal. Anger. Or maybe just the slow, sinking realization that the woman I had fought so hard for had never truly been mine to begin with. The door creaked open. I didn't look up right away. I could hear the rustling of her jacket as she set her bag down, the soft click of her heels against the floor. She didn't know I was awake. Didn't know I was waiting. For a moment, I let the silence stretch between us. Let her feel the weight of the stillness in the room. Then, without looking away from my phone, I finally spoke. "Who is Frankie?" The sound of her keys hitting the table stopped. There was a pause. A fraction of a second where the air in the room seemed to shift. Then came the sigh. The frustrated, tired, "How dare you even ask me that" sigh. "Bear, what the hell are you talking about?" I lifted my eyes to meet hers. She was already on the defensive. Arms crossed, chin lifted slightly, like she was preparing for a fight she had already convinced herself she was going to win. I repeated the question. "Who is Frankie?" She let out a short laugh, shaking her head like I was crazy. "You're being paranoid. Why are you even bringing this up? You're always looking for something to be mad about." Her voice was sharp, clipped, like she was trying to shut it down before it could even start. But I wasn't backing down. So I leaned forward, my voice calm. Steady. "I saw your Facebook profile." That got her attention. For the first time, I saw it, the flicker of something in her eyes. Panic. I saw the way her body stiffened, the way her lips parted slightly like she was trying to find the right words. But I didn't give her the chance. "Your status says single." Silence. "I scrolled through your photos. No pictures of me. No sign of us. But Frankie? He's there." Her arms tightened around herself. "It's just Facebook, Bear. That doesn't mean anything." I let out a breath. A slow, measured breath. "If it doesn't mean anything, why did you hide it from me?" She shifted on her feet, glancing toward the hallway like she was already looking for an escape. "I didn't hide anything. You're just overreacting." Her voice was different now. Less anger. More hesitation. She knew she was losing control of the conversation. I held up my phone. Comments. Likes. Inside jokes. A pattern of him always being there, always lingering in the background. But that wasn't even the worst part. So I lowered the phone, looked her dead in the eyes, and said the words that made her entire body freeze. "I heard you last night." Her breath hitched. "I heard you crying. I heard what you said." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. "I wish he could stay. I don't want to choose." The blood drained from her face. For a long moment, she just stared at me, her entire body rigid, her mouth opening and closing as if she wanted to say something, anything, that would make it go away. But she couldn't. Because there was nothing left to say. I leaned back in my chair, waiting. Waiting for the lies. The excuses. The desperate attempt to turn this around on me. But instead, for the first time since this all started, she broke. Tears welled in her eyes, her shoulders shaking as she pressed a hand to her forehead. "Bear, She stopped. Swallowed. Then, just like that, the mask shattered. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't defensive. She was terrified. Because she knew. She knew that I knew. And there was no coming back from this. I expected her to deny it. I thought she would try to spin another lie, twist the truth into something she could control. That's what she had always done before, talk her way out of things, turn it back on me, make me question if I was the one who was wrong. But this time? She didn't even try. She just stood there, silent, her eyes wide and filled with something I had never seen in her before. Defeat. Her chest rose and fell in uneven breaths, her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. And then, she broke. The tears came fast, harder than I had ever seen. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking, body curling inward like she was trying to disappear. Like if she could just make herself small enough, maybe the weight of what she had done wouldn't crush her. But it was too late for that. I had spent so much time convincing myself that maybe, just maybe, she was still the woman I fell in love with. That she was just lost, confused, that if I just held on long enough, she would find her way back to me. But that was never going to happen. Because she had never been lost. She had already made her choice. And it wasn't me. I stared at her, at this woman who had once been my everything, and all I felt was emptiness. I should have been furious. I should have screamed at her, demanded answers, thrown everything she had done in her face. But I didn't. Because I finally understood. She had never loved me the way I loved her. I had been convenient. Reliable. The man who would always be there, who would pick up the pieces when she shattered, who would carry the weight of our relationship on my back while she waited for someone else. She was never going to choose me. Because she had been using me from the start. The worst part? Somewhere deep down, I think I had always known. I had ignored every red flag, every warning sign. I had told myself that love was about forgiveness, about patience, about giving someone the chance to be better. But some people don't want to be better. Some people just want to take. And I had given her everything. I sat there, gripping the armrests of my chair, my body numb, my mind racing through every moment I had spent loving her. Every sacrifice. Every time I had put her first. Every time I had chosen her, even when she had made it clear she wouldn't do the same for me. And now, I had nothing left to give. She wiped at her face, her breathing still unsteady as she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Bear, I didn't mean for this to happen." I let out a short, hollow laugh. That was the thing, wasn't it? She never meant for it to happen. Just like she never meant to cheat with my brother. Just like she never meant to lie to me over and over again. But somehow, it always did. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw her for who she really was. Not the woman I had convinced myself she could be. Not the girl I had once fallen in love with. Just a selfish, broken person who had never been capable of loving me in the first place. She sniffled, took a step toward me, reaching out like she could still fix this. "Bear, please," I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "No." That single word cut through the air like a blade. Her lips parted, like she wanted to say more, but I could see it in her eyes. She knew. She knew there was nothing left to say. Nothing she could do to undo this. Nothing she could say to make me stay. For so long, I had been afraid of this moment, of losing her, of walking away from the life we had built together. But standing there, staring at the woman who had broken me, I realized something. I had already lost her a long time ago. She was never mine to begin with. And now, I was finally ready to let her go. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the woman I had once thought I'd spend my life with. She was still crying, still trembling, her hands clutching at the edge of the table like she needed something to keep her from collapsing. "Bear, please." Her voice cracked, desperate, pleading. I'll fix this. I promise. I'll do whatever it takes. Once, those words would have meant everything to me. I would have clung to them like a drowning man reaching for a lifeline. But not anymore. Because for the first time since all of this started, I didn't believe her. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry she got caught. And I wasn't going to be the fool who stayed this time. Without a word, I turned and walked toward the bedroom. My movements felt slow, heavy, like my body was working through the weight of everything crashing down on me at once. I grabbed my bag from the closet, tossing in whatever I could find. I didn't care what I took with me. The only thing that mattered was getting out. Behind me, I could hear her footsteps approaching, her voice rising in panic. Bear, wait. Just talk to me. Don't do this. I kept packing. She tried again, stepping in front of me, her eyes wide with desperation. You're overreacting. We can work through this. I met her gaze, and for the first time, I saw her clearly. Not the woman I had spent years loving. Not the girl I had forgiven over and over again. Just a stranger. A stranger who had worn my love like a shield while she searched for something better. A stranger who had only ever seen me as a backup plan. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Briella, move. She shook her head. No. Please. Her hands grabbed my arms, her fingers gripping me like she could physically hold me in place, keep me locked in this cycle of betrayal and regret. I gently pulled away. Move. She didn't listen. Her voice broke as she whispered, I need you. I let out a hollow laugh. No, you don't. Her expression twisted, something like pain flickering across her face. You don't love me. I was just the safety net, wasn't I? She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. Because she knew it was true. Her silence was the only answer I needed. I slung my bag over my shoulder and stepped around her. Bear, don't do this, she choked out. But I was already walking away. For the first time in years, I didn't stop. I didn't look back. As I stepped outside, the night air hit me like a shock to the system. Cold. Sharp. But for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. I had spent so much of my life chasing after someone who had never truly been mine. Holding on to memories of who I thought she was, instead of facing the reality of who she had always been. The worst part of betrayal isn't losing them. It's losing the version of yourself that trusted them. It's realizing that you gave everything to someone who was only ever looking for their next escape. Some people don't cheat because they're unhappy. They cheat because they know they'll get away with it. They cheat because they know there's someone like me, someone who loves them enough to forgive. But I won't be that person anymore. Not for her. Not for anyone. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Let me know in the comments. I'm listening.